Okay, so we are now recording. So I'll just run through that very briefly again. We don't get opportunities to see each other coaching. We don't get opportunities to really talk as coaches. So we'll do this again as we progress through lockdown, share ideas and learn from each other. I'm going to hand over to, there's not that many people on the call right now, but you can all see each other on the who's there. So we're not going to waste time with introductions, but when we do the open Q&A, we can all just sort of say hello if we don't know each other. So in a minute, I'm handing over to Nick. Then after Nick's doing a 2-minute slot, it's going to be over to Bobby, who's going to walk us through West Genny variations. You should see Bobby's whiteboard on his camera. And then that's going to be about 15 minutes. And then on or before 10, we'll get into an open Q&A session. There's been some questions already submitted that are slapped into the chat. So we can run through them and then run through anything else that anyone's got any questions about men's field lacrosse. Okay, enough of me. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand over to Nick and then we'll hand over to Rob. Over to you, Nick.
Hey, morning everybody. Good to see a few people on. Just a praise here of the courses because obviously in the UK, in order to be paid for coaching, you have to be a certain level coach. The schools and the councils and the universities will always ask for your qualifications before they'll pay you. It's very unlikely they'll pay you without any. So it's a piece of paper exercise for some people, but actually it's really important that we are proving our competence, which is what courses are about. England Lacrosse are just about to half price all the courses while we're in lockdown as well. So it's a good time to let them make a loss on the courses, which is what they're going to do. Just to say that we moved away about a year ago from the traditional level 1, level 2, level 3 courses. We did this because it was always felt that for me to be a level 2 coach, I must do a level 1 badge. And to do a level 3, I must do a level 2. You do not have to do that. It's all based on your competency beforehand and prior learning. So we changed the level 1 to fundamentals, the level 2 to field, and the level 3 to talent. Okay, very slightly differences in the courses. So the level 1 course is a classroom-based, outside practical, tutor-on-learner course, i.e. you're taught something. Now, during lockdown, we've moved all the theory, the classroom theory, onto a webinar, which is actually working very well. So now there is a webinar 2 or 3 days before the course, and then there's 3-4 hours out in the field going through what it says on the can, the fundamentals of lacrosse. Now, even though some people are lacrosse players and have been playing a long time, actually they forget how to deliver the basics to a beginner, to a new fresher, or to a 10-year-old. And it's going over all those things, and it touches on the 4 basic skills of lacrosse, plus the stuff like dodges, how to check safely, how to change hands. But it's not how to do it, it's how to coach it, what you should be looking for and what things to look for when you see someone doing it wrong. So it's that real basic stuff that you're trying to do. Rob's frowning. Does that mean you can't hear me, Rob?
No, I can hear you loud and clear. I've seen a couple more people come onto the call.
Okay.
I don't have my effects on. So.
Right. I saw you frowning, so I thought it was you'd losing volume or something. Okay. The field course is based on people who want to be a club coach. So if you're a fundamentals coach, you'll be probably an assistant coach. If you're a field coach, that means you're a head coach. You've got to have people that you run. So there's a lot on session planning, on managing people. There's a lot on peer mentoring. And what happens in the field course is you have to do a webinar, an introduction webinar, which is basically how the course runs. A lot of it is online, a lot of information that's in our learning platform, which is called Moodle. And there's videos and there's how-tos, there's documents, there's all kinds of stuff on there. And there is, you're allocated a tutor for the course. And that person is paid, we pay them, runs through the course with you. You have to put up 4 or 5 session plans, and it finishes with a face-to-face assessment, i.e. you have to coach a competent team. It doesn't have to be an England team, but it can't be all beginners at field lacrosse, male or female, doesn't matter, or should I say contact or semi-contact, however you want to describe them these days. And when you finish your assessment, you're found to be competent, and then you get your badge. And then the talent course is by application. You have to write your lacrosse CV. It's sent to me. I sent it to the talent panel, and we run 2 or 3 cohorts of 10 or 12 people a year. And that is very much one-to-one face. At the moment, it's with Tom Wenham, who was the England men's coach for a long time. And it's a mixture of coaching in front of people, webinars and cafes and things like that. So it's quite a long course. And with COVID, none of the courses, except for the fundamentals, have kind of got an end date because we can't get out and coach and be seen to do stuff. The thing we're looking to do with the field course, as a slight difference, is we might look at assessments under video. So if you video yourself assessing someone, coaching someone, we might assess using the video if it's of a reasonable quality. If it's not good enough quality, you just have to do it again. So that's just the layout of the England Lacrosse courses. One of the questions that came up briefly was I need to unlock my suspension when I'm on my website, and I need a first aid course. I think that was a question that came up. Was it a competent first aid course?
That was a question that got submitted, yes, Nick.
Yeah. So England Lacrosse do provide first aid courses, but that's for a club to hire a company that we're in bed with who have developed a lacrosse bias first aid course. Concentrates on sprains, bruises, that kind of stuff, lacrosse-y type injuries. Bath Lacrosse did one just before lockdown, and they come to your club and you get the members, you pay them. England Lacrosse don't get anything for it. They're just our partner, and they run the course. So you can do that and run one at your club and get all your members of the club through a first aid course. Don't ask me the prices. I believe they're on the website. However, there are online first aid courses, a St. John's first aid. Anything that you do as a first aid that gives you a recognised certificate would be what would be recognised. Okay, so it's if you're certificated, and every recognised course comes with a certificate, and all you do is upload that and say, I've done. Even there's one that's first aid at work would count because it's a first aid course, because you're a first responder really on the lacrosse pitch. You're not a full-blown paramedic. Okay, and if you have a doubt about the first aid course and you found one, just email me. I'll ask the man who knows the right answer, and I'll find an answer for you if you have one that you're not sure about. Open to questions, Rob.
Yeah, thanks,
quick
Nick.
Rush through the courses, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, any immediate questions on the courses, and then we'll take all other questions after Rob Ingham Clark has done the West Genny variations. No. Nick, thank you. We'll probably touch on courses again later. So, Rob Ingham Clark, welcome. Everyone should know Rob, but if not, you can introduce yourself, and then the floor is yours.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Rob Ingham Clark. I'm pretty sure, having looked at the people on the call, you all know who I am in one way, shape or form. If there are some people who don't, I'm the head of lacrosse at Stowe School. I've done a lot of other bits and pieces, including English universities for the last couple of years, and the head coach of Wales Under-20s. At school, it's all girls lacrosse, so both field versions of the game I'm pretty au fait with. But what I want to cover today is West Genny and its variations, which is a great drill for both, as Nick Roberts said, full contact and semi-contact forms of the game. So, firstly, the name. A lot of people call this a variety of different things. When I first heard about it, it was called basketball. But as I've spent more time in the game, more time coaching, getting around in that respect, both online and in person, it turns out that this should, in the lacrosse world, be called West Genny with a G, G-E-N-N-Y, which is short for West Genny High School, where this drill originated. So, having a common parlance, having a common lexicon of words for our drills, I think is only going to help us significantly as coaches, because at the moment there is very, very little in common with what our drills get called from club to club, program to program. So I am strongly in favour of this being called West Genny, to sort of have respect for where it came from. So, what is West Genny? West Genny is a continuous drill / practice. I know England Lacrosse like to call it a practice. It is not a go here, do this, put some cones down sort of thing. The more cones you put down asking a player to do something, particularly at a senior level, the fewer decisions they're going to have to make. So this is, in its most basic format, is a 3 versus 2 continuous practice. And when we talk about 3v2, I think it's very important that we always put the number of attackers first. So, 6-on-5 with extra player up. 5-on-6 with player down. And again, having that common pylon, having that common way of saying things, I think is going to only be very, very useful going forwards in lacrosse. So, we've got the red team, we've got the green team, okay? So, red team are going to start with the ball. Now, if you're lucky enough to have 2 goalkeepers, you can have a goalkeeper at each end. And I'd also think that making it competitive is good. So, at the end of each drill, each practice, each rep, players can come out and return to their home base, okay? So, red are going to start with the ball. We've got 2 defenders set up like this. If you're playing men's, it's not a problem where they are. If you're playing women's, obviously we do have the 11 metre to take into account. So, we've got our 3 red attackers up here who are going to be coming down, try and score into this goal here. So, as I'm sure many of you will know, we need to try to create a triangle. Okay? Can everybody see this okay? Nick?
Yeah, I can see it okay, Rob.
Yeah, I can just about see it, yeah.
Right, fabulous news, okay? So, we bring ourselves into this situation here. Now, I'm a big proponent of bringing the ball down on a wing. Okay? Because if we bring a ball down on a wing, we spike the ball down, and then we make 2 short passes, and not one of those passes is over or through a defender's stick. Whereas if we carry down the middle, we make 1 short pass, which is fine, but then the next pass most likely is going to be through a sliding defender's stick. So when we have these 2 short passes, we end up in a better situation to score a higher percentage shot, and that's what it's all about. When we're in extra player situations, which this is, and so much of lacrosse is an extra player situation, you dodge one person when you're settled in 6-on-6, suddenly it's a 6-on-5, it's an extra player situation. We're looking for these 3 versus 2, these 2v1 situations, and we're looking to score the highest percentage shot that we can do. And in this kind of situation, it is all about the high percentage shots, and not just the high percentage shots, the high percentage passes, the high percentage. And so if we carry the ball down the middle and we come into contact with our first defender here, we can make 1 pass fine. But it's quite easy for that defensive player to come and either collide or contain or knock down that second pass coming across here. So, in terms of bringing it down the pitch, these goals can be any distance apart you like. I would say probably the shortest amount of distance is probably about 25 metres, but you can take that up to half field, 3/4 field. It depends how much you want your players to run, how many players you've got. But if you bring the ball down the side, make 1 pass, you make another pass, and then this player is free to shoot on the goal. Okay? Now, this is in a situation where all players are right-handed. I'm fairly unlucky in that most of the teams that I coach, we have not very many left-handers, and if they are left-handed, they're properly defended. And so in this situation, we're looking to get the ball to our right-handed shooter, who's the player in the most probable place that they will be able to score a goal rather nicely. Similarly, we're also looking to kind of game the defence a little bit, and I'll come to the defence in a moment. But from an offensive standpoint, we want to carry the ball down, 2 short passes, and put it in our right-handed player's stick. They are the one most likely to score a goal. And until a defence picks you up on that, certainly is the look every time, in my opinion, in terms of the highest percentage, the most probable way of putting the ball in the back of the net and goals win games. That's how we win the cross games, and of course defence is what wins the championship. So, let's have a quick look at what we're looking for the defence to do here. A lot of it is situational. A lot of it is going to be based on where the ball is. So when we are at the very early stage of the attack bringing the ball down, we still have our defence set up in that I formation. Okay. So we've got the ball up here, and our man passes early. The ball's there. We don't have to worry about sliding around here at the back. Our green player is very, very easy. Just up over a little bit. to make sure they're still on the ball, because this player is going to have the best opportunity to stop that, and it means that our player here, who is still the backside player, can still pick up the backside two attacking players. And what we're trying to do with our defence is be as efficient as possible. The other element here as well is that it's very difficult for defenders a lot of the time, particularly younger defenders, to do a lot of odd player situation drills, particularly when especially when the attacker up. But I think it's very important to reiterate that it's not all about the big takeaways. It's not all about the massive check, body check, anything like that in the girls' game, looking at the takeaway check, the big interception. It's about delaying the game, okay? Because these extra player situations are very, very fleeting. They're only going to last a couple of seconds. You are going to have a trailing midfielder come in. Obviously, there's going to be some 6-on-5 situations players being sent off. But for these smaller extra player situations, 2v1s, 2v2s, 4v3s, they're fleeting. And so if you're able, as a pair or a trio or a quadruple of defenders, to forward the attack to make 5 passes, and you've slowed them down, you've done your job. So it's sliding to contain and making sure that we are being efficient and delaying the attackers. Of course, we have our sticks up in the passing lane. If there's any opportunity for us to get the knockdown, to get the interception, we're going to try our best to take it, but not so much that we're going to overextend ourselves to the point that we are giving them an even easier set of odds. Obviously, a 2 versus 1 is probably certainly easier to score from than a 3 versus 2. So we've had our chap here sliding around and coming over here to mark the ball. Right-handed player or left-handed player spiking the ball down the field. Point defender can come over to cover, and our backside defender's got the 2. Okay? Now, the one more thing I'm going to say about this from a attacking standpoint is that we want this player here to almost never shoot the ball, or at least we're trying to persuade them in their head that they are the distributor. And this is something in a 3 versus 2 and a 4 versus 3, that player is the distributor. And so it's really important that this player stays up nice and high. Okay? So if we bring the ball down the pitch a little bit more, so we're going to say that our point player has started sliding over here, and our man's got the ball, or our girl, or our woman. This player here is the distributor, because this player gets to choose who's going to score the goal, realistically. Because if we have one pass to up top and one pass down here, and all of these passes to the distributor have got to be quick, this player, when the ball is passed up top, will slide up that way. And then one easy pass down means we've got an easy route to the goal. And if the defence are quick, and if they're hedging, we've got an easy face dodge underneath that player, because this player will be charging across as fast as possible, and that's something you can exploit as an attacker. Now, if they're getting wise to this, and the defence are cheating and they're coming super early, this distributor here can very easily fake a pass down to this player here, and send it back to this player. And this player can easily have hedged up a little bit, have a good angle to shoot on the goal, even if they're right-handed. It's not as ideal as this player over here, but it's how we can patch out the defence who are cheating. Okay? So it's about creativity, it's about high percentages, and it's of course situational. We don't want to be unbelievably super hold the party line prescriptive. It's important that players are able to be creative and try different things. But we talk about the high percentages. We talk about what's the most sensible shot to take, what's the most sensible pass to make, and about the timing of that. So in this sort of situation, say we've swung the ball around to here, our man shoots, our girl shoots, or our player shoots. This player, the shooter, or the last person to touch the ball, is going to drop out of the drill. So they're going to leave at the side, not just run straight back, they're going to leave at the side and come back round. Our 2 green defenders will drop out and they'll come and join the back of their lines here. And then these 2 red attackers will hustle back and become 2 defenders there. Okay? And then we have 3 new green players who are going to then go and initiate 3 versus 2 from, as we look at the board, the south going north. And that way, it can be continual. In terms of how many players need to do this, and this is, of course, the most basic sort of traditional West Genny, you need, not including goalkeepers, I think I've counted you need about 14 players, which for most squads is manageable. For most training sessions is manageable. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is more the variations. I thought it was important to get the basics under our belt, the idea of this dropping out, the idea of what the defence is looking to do, where to move, because it's important that we know the fundamentals. But what do we do in other situations when we maybe have fewer players, or we want to achieve different goals, or maybe we only have 1 goal, or we've got loads of players? West Genny works really nicely between sort of, it's certainly not a beginner's drill, but at the lower end of intermediate through to advanced to, elite, it's a very, very useful drill. It gets people going, gets people moving, they've got to think tactically, particularly as you start your session. So one of the things that we did at University of Hertfordshire, very much when we had the winning seasons there, was that we would start every session with 15 minutes of West Genny. We'd turn up, we'd warm up, no stick work, straight into West Genny, which kind of got us out of a bad sort of habit of, being very slow to sort of turn up to games. So, how do we do this? We've got not many people. So what we've got is what we call a half Genny. Half Gennies are a little bit less cardiovascularly requiring, shall we say. What happens is we've got our 3 players up top, we've got our 2 down here. If you've got a goalkeeper, which is very helpful in this situation, you can start with a clear up to one of these 3 players. She'll spike it down the side. The shooter drops out, so we've got our lefty shooting this time. Shooter drops out, 2 defenders drop out, will come to the side, and then these 2, who were the wing players of the ball carrier and the shooter last time, will become the 2 defenders down here. Really, really good warm-up exercise, particularly for midfielders needing to play them both sides of the ball. Really easy to do at tournaments, even if you don't have heaps of players. You can do this, very, very comfortably with under 10 players. And so that's called a half Genny, and you can do it from a clear, or you can do it with the ball starting up top. And this is a good way to teach West Gennies as well, particularly with younger players, more developmental players, in terms of getting the concept of the attacker then becomes the defender. And I think that when we're not doing our half Gennies, when we've got full West Gennies or any side, any sort of size, that's what I mean. The real focus is going from attack mode frame very quickly to defensive frame, and everyone having to play both sides of the ball and make good decisions. It's uncommon that your lowest of low attackers will end up going over the halfway line, and that's for all my Camden teammates who will inevitably take the mickey out of me later. It's very uncommon that your low defenders will be making their way up the pitch, but if they do find themselves in that situation, it's important they have at least a vague inkling of what they need to be doing. Okay? So the next one I'm going to talk about is one that I've heard be called West Midtown. Now, West Midtown, instead of going north-south, goes east-west, and so you get all the fun of the fair with just having 1 goal. It's a great one if you've only got 1 goal, but I think that this one is actually a little even more true to what situations you find offensively, because when you're attacking from the wing, it's very frequent, in my opinion, that you find 3v2, 2v1 situations coming in from the wing, and then you can exploit them. Okay, so if we've got a north-south line here, okay, we've got our red players over here. We've got our green players over here. Again, we'll start with our. We'll let the red team defend this to start off with. So we've got defender, and again, if you've got a goalie, start with a clear. Get a goalie involved. If not, you can just start it from the side, which is also fine. Essentially, players are going to come in like this. So we end up in a triangle. Again, 3 players, triangle, chop. I'm sure you've all heard it before. So, again, we're carrying the ball in from the side, and this time I suggest that it's a good idea that we do carry it in from the middle player. Our middle player can easily make 2 passes in order to score a goal. So, excuse me, we need to carry the ball in until a defensive player comes to us to commit to us. We're engaging the defender. We make a short pass down low, which will engage our second defender, and then this player up here is cutting down off the ball, and we can do very easy feed to this player, who can then put the ball in the back of the net quite comfortably. Particularly on this side of the field, particularly if you're on a righty heavy side, that is most likely going to be the highest percentage situation and highest percentage position on the field that somebody is going to be able to score a goal from. Say our man up here has just scored his goal, he comes out, he comes to the back of his line, he is not on defending duty. 2 red players drop out and they're going to come to the back here. We're then going to have our 2 wing attack players. They're going to bring themselves over to here and here. And once again, we can set it up. We can continue it continuously, and this can go on as long as you like. The reason we have this line up here is just like the Rutgers attack drill. We don't really want this to sort of collapse over the halfway line. Realistically, it's very, very, very uncommon that you're going to have only 3 attackers and only 2 defenders on the pitch. And this is just trying to keep us a little bit honest. A couple of times when you do this to begin with and you don't have this north-south line in, players can kind of find themselves over here, and then we're just sort of collapsing into this rather sort of nebulous and poorly defined sort of 3 versus 2 that's got all the space in the world. And this is just putting a constraint on us to try and make us operate in a smaller area. Of course, operating in a smaller area, box lacrosse, it increases our handling and our ability in that respect. And I think that is always a good idea for progression. The last one I'm going to talk about, I do not have a name for this one, so I will accept any suggestions. We're back into our regular sort of West Genny situation, we're up and down, but this time, this is certainly a little bit more of a midfielder's one. Instead of having our triangle like that, we're going to invert the triangle. So we can still pass our ball out to one of our men on the side here, but we're going to come down here, okay? And this is going to really help us when we are reacting to slides coming from the crease. So if we've got a ball here, so we've got a black team now, we're going to, realistically, defensively, we're going to be here and here. Our black player here is going to engage this defender, okay? We need to try to engage the defender because it means that we're pulling the defender away from the melee, away from the area in front of goal, and lengthening their slides, making the team defensive job more difficult. So we're going to start running towards this player here to bring him over, which is great. Okay. We can then make a short pass over to here as this player is cutting down. So realistically, let's say cutting down a little bit, and so we're passing it to him here, which will draw our crease defender. And if that crease defender doesn't come, this guy's got a really easy step down shot. But if he does come, tie him up. It's a really easy little pass to our player on the crease here. We can then just dump it into the goal. It's exactly the same sort of turnaround. It's just another variation to keep it fresh. With this drill, this practice needs to be high intensity for it to have like a real, real benefit. But doing exactly the same thing week on week can obviously get a little bit tiresome for the players, particularly the defensive players who often get caught on the wrong side of an odd player situation. With all of these things, you can change the numbers. 4v3s are good. You can make them even. You can do them as 3v3 with a trailing midfielder coming through as well. The opportunities really are endless. So I'm going to wrap up there. I hope that this is something you can take away and use at whatever club that you're a part of, at whatever level. Hopefully there's something that you can take from this and input it if West Genny is something you're already doing at your club. But thank you very much indeed for listening. And Rob Beach, back over to you.
Yes, Rob, thank you very much. That is exactly the kind of thing that I was hoping we'd be able to share during these sessions. I was able to hear and see that quite clearly. I hope everyone else could as well. I'll throw in, maybe record that last one, the inverted journey, or something like that. And that's one I've never seen before, so thank you very much, because that's something I've already taken out of this, and I'll be certainly giving that a go when we get back on the field. I'll open the floor up for questions about what Rob has just done, and then we'll go through the pre-submitted questions. Any questions on West Genny for Rob?
Yeah, I have a very quick one. For the half city version, so when we go from side to side, is there any reason why you wouldn't have those players, after they finish the drill, swapping sides, so then next time they come on the drill, they go, right hand, left hand, because it's quite clear if you're coming from a left or a right, that right hand tendency and left hand tendency kind of comes into a play. Like that, the ability of a player to play with a righty and a lefty.
Yeah, hear you loud and clear, Jules. It's a very good question. It's a very pertinent one. I think that these drills go better when there's a competitive element to it. So I would say that we would do that drill twice, and we would split into two teams, lights and darks, and you'd have lights on one side, you have darks on the other side, and say you've got 20 balls each, and then we swap sides, and then you've got 20 balls each, and the aggregate goals is the winner of that. It helps sort of project, helps with the competitiveness. Lacrosse is a competitive game. There is a winner and a loser. And I think it's important to try and instill that in any situation that you can. It's the gamification of practice. And so, yeah, it also means that, people can, if you're everyone's on their weak hand, or their non-dominant hand, the first bit, particularly those who are developing their skills, they can see how the other side does it and see how they react to that constraint of only being on dominant or only being on non-dominant. And then when they swap over to the other side, then they hopefully will be able to put some of their thoughts into practice. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So basically, do swap sides, but not necessarily every single time. Yeah. Just have some reps on one side, sort of, hit the iron when it's hot, and then swap around. Cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Julius. Thank you for calling.
Great question. Any other questions on West Genny and variations? If not, you can always throw them in later. Nick,
yeah.
Question?
Well, not really a question, just to point out, Rob, is that was from the attacking point of view. You did talk a little bit about the defensive slide and first slide, second slide, for those who don't use the same language. Can you emphasize in the defending against the 3-on-2, when you have your I formation, who makes the decisions as to who slides when or not? Do you see what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, with defence, all communication is absolutely key. I would say that it is going to vary as who you've got on the field. Realistically, in any sort of defensive set, you're going to have a senior defender. You might have a goalkeeper who's got a great vision of the field. So if you've got a goalkeeper in here, I would say it's up to the goalkeeper to making those decisions. And I know very much in SEMLA you get fire 1, fire 2, that kind of idea. If we're down here and we've got maybe a long pole and a short stick, we can put our. It's important to sort of swap them around, but your trail, your non-point player, then being able to pull the shots because they're going to have a wider field of vision. But similarly, if you've got a more inexperienced player, then perhaps you're going to need to have that leadership coming from the point. But I think that we should certainly, in these sorts of things, in a mixed ability group, try to have our less experienced player at the point and our more experienced point on the crease, so that there's one slide ready to be able to help direct that player.
Okay, supplemental. Sorry. Distance between the two players in the eye.
Distance between the two players in the eye. Realistically, we are going to it's going to differ a little bit from men's and women's as well, I think. With women's, once for those you don't know, I know this is obviously a men's call. Once we're over the restraining line, women defenders cannot be within the 11 metres for more than 3 seconds without closely marking somebody. Given that this is a men's call, I'll try and focus it in on that predominantly. I would say 8 metres is probably a good, 6 to 8 metres is pretty good. It depends on the speed at which the opposition are coming down. It depends on the sort of spread, but I reckon your 6 to 8 metres should probably cover it until that point defender starts coming out. If they wish to engage the attacker, it's always a decision you're going to have to make. Can this attacker score a goal? Do I need to go and put significant, how significant amount of pressure do I need to put on them? Are they going to pass early because they're frightened of getting hit? Are they going to hang on to the ball and try and dodge past me? All of these are questions that defenders are asking themselves on a sort of second-by-second basis. So that is the distance I would suggest, Nick.
Cool. Can I just make a point for anybody that's listening? 'Cause 8 metres is about right. Is if the front guy or girl charges up the field to meet the attack, you're going to extend that distance, thereby making any slide too long. You're going to make yourself a problem. So as a defender, you kind of wait for the attack to get to you rather than running up the field to meet the attack. So there's a little bit more of staying in formation for longer than you would think is a point I would try to make. Sorry. There's a habit we have when we're coaching beginners in particular, that we set up in an I formation in a defence and the front person charges at the field to meet the ball, which makes like a 10, 15 metre gap between the two. So the first pass becomes a long way. That front point cannot possibly follow the pass and keep the I formation. It has to be a slide. Therefore, it opens up two attackers quite often. That's just the only point I make. It's good though, Rob.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And again, the reason we're having these is so that we can get as many of our experienced coaches on these to give all these nuggets. Right, I'm going to move on to, we've got some pre-submitted questions. So these are for anyone to answer and maybe have 2 or 3 different answers, just help give some ideas. So the first one, these are in the chat. So the first one is tips to help undo bad habits in 2 to 3 year players. For example, common examples, every shot being a sidearm YouTube highlight missing a goal by a mile, or excessive cradling where the ball pops out before they even get to any contact. So I know I've seen this a couple of times. Players maybe play for 2 or 3 years and they've just watched too much YouTube. How do you stop those bad habits from forming once they're set into that player? Any ideas?
I'm happy to jump on this. I think that there are a variety of different things that we can do to help these situations. Obviously, we all like watching bits and pieces on YouTube and Instagram and seeing some top players shoot the ball very hard right up into the top 90. I think firstly there's got to be the discussion, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be one-on-one, but maybe that is something that we can do if the problem persists. I spoke briefly earlier about high percentage shots and, sidearm shots, unless you're very experienced, you're shooting very regularly, a couple of times a week, hard, at pace. It's going to be a real challenge to make sure that's going where you want it to go every single time, particularly in 2 to 3 year players. So we always say shoot overhand. And a lot of people go, well, I don't like shooting overhand, and maybe don't understand the reason why. And so I think the initial point is that why do we shoot overhand? We shoot overhand because if we release the ball a little bit late, then it's going to still hit the deck and bounce up and it can still go in the goal. Whereas if we shoot sidearm and we release too early or too late, it's going to veer off wide, very, very wide of the goal. And so that is why we shoot overhand and why we try to coach not shooting sidearm. There are, of course, situations where shooting sidearm is great if you kind of shoot around a player, but when you need to be of a certain experience to be able to institute that in-game play. So how to get around it? Firstly, they have to accept that they're doing it, and they have to accept that they are going to probably score more goals shooting overhand. They then need to learn how to shoot overhand. If they have not been taught how to shoot overhand, that can be difficult. And similarly, you can put in there's a phone box drill. So if you have other goals, which is pretty handy. Alternatively, you can use a pair of pylons, a couple of stakes in the ground, and you have one either side of the shooter, maybe a metre apart. You have to shoot between the two pylons, because if you have a pylon or a pair of goals about a metre apart, you obviously can't shoot sidearm. And so that is something that is quite helpful in terms of as a training aid. But realistically, unless you can persuade these players that it is an issue and that they're not getting the shooting percentage and they're wasting their scoring opportunities by shooting sidearm, it's going to be quite challenging. And I know for smaller clubs, particularly those that don't have coaches sideline, like I say that Camden still doesn't have coaches sideline for most of the game. Being able to take these stats to show scoring opportunities, shots on target, shots that actually go in, it's quite difficult to substantiate those sorts of things when you're doing those classic league, Saturday league, sitting around the table at the pub doing a moms and dods at the end of it.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Nick.
I've got, just to point out, I'm putting the fundamentals course, but it's all to do with the mechanics of how people throw. And if you look at there's a correct mechanics, and then you add style to it. As you become a better player, you add your own style. People have different arm lengths, whatever. The simple thing that we teach at the very beginning of when you're being taught to throw the ball or shoot the ball is to point, pull, push, i.e. you point the stick at the target and you pull with one hand, push with the other. And it's that setup. If you don't point at the target, i.e. the bottom hand has to go through what you're aiming at. And if you look at any angle of throw, when you go in, and it's an overhand shot, is your bottom hand goes to the target, the top hand goes over it, you're going to hit the target. Most people who are missing, and with a sidearm, are actually, if you look at the way they set up their shot, usually pointing to the left to start with. And so it accentuates anything. When you put more power on, it will start to drag to the left. So when you're analysing the individual person, so it teaches it, because from the bottom of the stick, from the butt end of the stick to the head of the stick is a straight line. And wherever the butt end goes, the ball will try to follow. It's a mechanical thing. So when you're analysing someone shooting or throwing and they're missing constantly in one direction, have a look at their setup. They're probably setting up, pointing slightly in the direction the ball ends up going. So when they do the point, pull, push bit, they're actually pulling through off target. And that means they drag across. And a lot of people on the sidearm will correct it with their top hand because they've got used to correcting it. But under pressure, when they're trying to put a lot of power down, you tend to revert to what you're taught. So at the very beginning, getting your point, pull, push and get your bottom hand through the target early as a beginner means under pressure you will revert to the correct way, which is the overarm shot, as Rob said. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. I'll move on to the next question. Advice on planning club weekly training sessions when attendance varies week to week. So there's always a mix of skill and experience and training needs. So that's the question. I hope that makes sense. So one week you might have 10 people turn up. Next week you might have 15. Then you might have just 6. I think the question is, can you actually plan for that? Or are coaches just kind of winging it based on who?
You go first, Nick.
Yeah. This comes down to what we concentrate a lot on is actually session planning and contingency planning. So you have to know what you're going to have beforehand or presume you've got something coming along. So you make your lesson plan or your session plan and your timings to X number of players at X ability. And then what we're talking about here is what happens if a bunch of people turn up and it's not what you expected, i.e. there's been an earthquake, so up, or you've made it too difficult, or don't forget we can sometimes make a drill very, very easy and the players get bored very quickly. So what you have to do is you have to run alongside your plan a contingency plan, and it's normally break things down into little sections. So what Rob was just doing there is an eye defense. You can actually build up from carrying the ball up, making that first pass, adding the defense, adding the slide. You can break things down into bits, and then you can find out which bit is causing the problem or where people, so your beginner has a problem with this particular bit, and you can regress your session back to what's the problem and then build it up again. So what you do is you put your steps, okay? Sorry. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Another question. This is about the 6-on-6 format, the Olympic format, there is no retained possession in a shot in the Olympic six game. What offensive shapes do people think are going to be most commonly adopted? So I hope you heard that question. So I don't know the answer to this, but I'm aware of the 6v6 rules, and yes, after a shot, no matter who is near as a back line, it's a turnover. So for me, that makes it, you're not going to have an attacker on necessarily near goal line extended to rush back and retain a shot, because you're never going to retain a shot. But you still might want to have an attacker behind goal line extended, because you can still go around the back of the goal. So I think this is a really good question about what that 5 offensive players, what shapes are going to be most effective for 6-on-6. Anyone have any thoughts about this?
Yeah.
Rob?
I've been quite lucky to play in Olympic Sixes format. It was the Manchester Sixes event last year, and I think it pretty quickly became clear that you're going to be using a lot of the similar tactics to box lacrosse, particularly setting up in a sort of a 3-2 sort of from one side to the other, or your sort of classic C shape to swing the ball with your pass down pick down. Of course, you can still go behind the goal, and there are situations where the offense can get the ball back if it comes off a pipe and goes off the back line, or comes off the goalkeeper and goes off the back line. It's whoever's closest, I believe. But yeah, I think you're gonna have all of your offensive players above goal line extended for the most part. That's not to say that you can't swing around the back, carry around the back. But I think, much like when you're in an extra player situation, you want to have every player being a scoring threat whenever you like. And particularly as we don't have long poles, and particularly as it stands, the wording of the law of no body checking is being very, very firmly held. I think realistically, it's going to make an enormous amount of sense to have all your players on top of the goal line in that C or in a 2-3.
The one comment I would make is that it's early days of the 6x6 rules. I imagine there will be changes.
Oh, I hope there are, significantly.
Yeah, I know. So do we all. But yeah, you're right. You'll probably have a feeder behind goal and load the front. So you give you the option.
So my wife is. So another thank you for that. Then we've answered the question about first aid. The other question we submitted was how about transition from man down to all even? So going from a 5-man zone to man on man. Did you hear that okay?
It was a bit glitchy.
Well, it's transition from 5-man zone to man on man.
So it is one of the ones I put up that I've noticed now is everybody seems to have frozen. Am I being heard?
I can hear you, yes, Nick.
Okay.
I can hear everybody very clear.
Okay, so just for beginner coaches down there, and one of the things is an outside coach observing games, if you like. And one of the conversations I often have in the field course when I'm doing my one-to-ones, doing the learner plans, is we tend to, because we're coaching ourselves at universities, so we're last year's coaches become this year, last year's players become this year's coaches, sort of thing. What is obvious to people who've been in the game a long time kind of gets lost a little bit. And this is the most common time when a team will let a goal in, tends to be as a person coming off the bench off a penalty, yelling and screaming all evens, and the defence has managed to hold out the attack for the full minute, but then straight away there's a goal scored. And it's usually when this person's charging in from the bench and there's all this moving from, we've been in a zone and we're moving to man on man. And it's the when to do this and how to arrange the team in a logical way to lessen that chance of that 10-second window opening where they get a shot off because everything's in transition between the two types of defence. Because very often, straight away, everybody goes and runs off and tries to take on a man-on-man, goes to an individual defensive position. if you logically think about it, if you've got a person off or two people off, so you're in a 4-man zone or a 5-man zone, whichever way it is, you have your dice 5, 4 corners and 1 in the middle as your formation generally. Okay, and those people are running a zone, so they're looking after an area, and each person passes on the attacker into the next area. You're not following the person because you're looking after an area. That's just principles of zone defense. When the person comes off the bench, it's what should happen next is the question that I always ask. Okay, and the answer is you move to a 6-man zone. So that person runs to the point front in between the 2 front defenders and sets up in a 6-man zone in front of the defense, thereby lessening the distance that the 2 front guys have got to run. Often that's the corner that's worked. You stay in a 6-man zone until the opportune time comes, i.e. the ball goes out of play or there's a penalty or something, and then you switch to man-on-man. That gives you time for your lead defender to say to people, okay, number 4, you've got number 16 when we go. The goalkeeper can direct the troops so that when the transition comes, you all go to the right person as opposed to just all making decisions on a hoof. And if you do that, go from a 5 to a 6 to man-on-man at the right time, you're much less likely to concede a goal in that transition time. That's all. Does that make sense to anybody?
Great.
That does, Nick. Thank you. Right, they were the pre-submit questions. We have 5 minutes, and we will be stopping at 1:45. So the floor is now open for anyone to ask any question.
I got a quick question about the West Genny variations. Rob, you talk about a lot of the middle player, being the distributor.
Yep.
If the ball comes from the right-hand side, naturally he's catching right. Would you recommend him switching to left before passing down, or would you recommend to swing that ball as quickly as possible to, the other side of the pitch?
So I'd say, given that we want that player to be nice and high up and away from trouble, I would say stay strong-handed to swing the ball nice and quickly, particularly if you're going to a fake. You're much more likely to be able to pull off a convincing fake with your top hand with your dominant hand than your non-dominant hand.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? And if there isn't, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Will Trump concede?
Right, we're gonna wrap it up. I'll just repeat what I said at the start. Thanks everyone for attending. This won't be a one-off. We will organise another one of these for maybe beginning of December, and I'll put a call out to all the coaching community. If someone else wants to specifically focus on something like Rob has today with West Genny, then someone else can have the floor for the 15-minute slot. So if you want to think about anything for the next time when the invite comes out, let me know. Get yourself on the hotspot and help share your knowledge and experience. So this has been recorded. I'll work out how to share this recording at some point later today. And thanks for joining. Enjoy your weekend, and let's hope we can get back on the cross field at some point soon.
Thanks very much.
I've stuck my email in the chat box. If anybody wants to email me, I'm quite happy to answer things.
Wonderful. And Rob, thank you very much for the West Genny work. Everyone,
my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Rob Gooch, can you hang on a second?
I can hang on. I'll just stop the recording.